just remembered that. Okay, so take it away, Pam.
Good morning. This is Dr. Pamela Thomas. Sorry, my voice is not pretty this morning. So that'll be fun for all of you to listen to. So I'm presenting Getting Real, Cataloging Realia. So hello and welcome. I'll answer your questions at the end of the presentation. The slides are posted on L2 right now, and then I will post the slides with the notes on L2 after the presentation is over. Okay, so this is the agenda for this morning. First, we're going to have a definition of what Realia is, and then we're going to talk about where to find the preferred source of title. And then we're going to briefly go over human-made versus naturally occurring objects. And then I'm going to be showing you some examples of Realia that the CMC has cataloged recently-ish within the last 18 months or so. The first one is the Red Cross 1918 Roll of Honor quilt. Next is the Centennial Celebration Medal from Dixon, Illinois, 1830 to 1930. Then there's the Abraham Lincoln button and coin, the Eller and Willey Block Company Christmas ornament, and finally Dixon, the Petunia City ceramic tile. So what is Realia? Realia is all naturally occurring objects and any other three-dimensional item made or modified by humans that does not fit into any of the other categories. So use this for machines, stitchery, clothing, rubber stamps, templates, pattern stencils, alphabets for lettering, shapes for flowcharts, jewelry, pottery, musical instruments, fabrics, tools, utensils, seashells, rocks, holograms, and furniture. And that is from OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards. So for this presentation, the examples are a quilt, medal, a coin and button set, a Christmas ornament, and a ceramic tile. So where can you find preferred source of title? What should you be looking at? Since these are items, they're, not going to be like a book or a DVD where you have a lovely printed title on the item. So RDA, and I'm specifically referring to the new toolkit, requires that a preferred source of information be chosen. So for objects, the preferred source of information can come from any number of locations. And these best practice recommendations are all from OLAC's best practices for cataloging objects. So the first recommendation is always make a note on the source of title. Second recommendation is always indicate when information that comes from outside the resource itself for transcription elements other than the title proper. And this may be done through notes or square brackets. And then the third recommendation is with an eye towards future cataloging systems and standards, we encourage using the MARC 588 field to record notes on sources of information, since it is a more specific and structured field. However, we recognize that not all catalogs may be configured to support display of the 588. In the records that I'm going to show you, there will be 588s for each item. So as I said, RDA, the new toolkit, requires that a preferred source of information be chosen. And so for objects, the preferred source of information can come from any number of those locations, as I mentioned. And again, all of this information is taken from OLAC's best practices for cataloging objects using RDA and MARC 21, and I will provide the link to that in my resources slide at the end of the presentation. So if you are creating a comprehensive description for multi-part objects, look for a source that describes the manifestation as a whole, such as the container. If none of these sources has a title, look for another source within the resource, giving preference to a source in which the information is formally presented. If that is not available, use one of the following in this order of preference. So it is common for multi-part objects to have unnumbered parts, in which case prefer a source of information identifying the earliest date of issue. Accompanying guides are often the likeliest source for this information. If one source has a title identifying a main or predominant aspect of the manifestation, use that. If no source of information identifies the manifestation as a whole and it has no predominant aspect, you may treat the sources identifying the individual parts as a collective source of information for the manifestation as a whole. And when a resource is issued as a single item and is described comprehensively, choose a source of information that identifies the resource as a whole. In some cases, the information needed to identify the resource does not appear on any source in the resource itself. Information is then taken from one of the following sources in order of preference: accompanying material, if using a comprehensive description, other published descriptions of the resource, a container that is not issued with the resource itself, in other words, a box or case made by the owner, and we've got an example of that later on, any other available source, in other words, a reference source. And again, this is all from OLAC's best practices for cataloging objects using RDA MARC 21, which has lots of lovely examples and information. Okay, so there is a distinction that keeps cropping up. So if you are cataloging something, just try to keep in mind that a human-made object has a producer, a publisher, etc., and it always has a date, or often has a date. But a naturally occurring object does not have a producer or a publisher, and there's no date determinable other than the date collected. And this is from Fun and Games, Cataloging 3D Objects by Scott M. Dutkowitz from the OLAC 2017 conference. And so hopefully this can kind of help you clarify in your mind when you are cataloging objects. So our first example is going to be this Red Cross 1918 Roll of Honor quilt. This is owned by the Groff Memorial Library, which is located in Grayville, Illinois. And this is the online catalog view of the record. We are going to go into the record in more detail, so I'm not going to talk about any of these fields yet. And here is an image of this beautiful quilt. So the 100 names that are directly around the cross are the names of the veterans. And then the large number of names around the edges are the donors. And we will talk a little bit more about that in a minute as well. Okay, so let's look at we're just going to look at a few of the fixed field elements. I'm not going to cover all of them. So first, we're going to look at type, which is type of record. And that's coded as R for a three-dimensional artifact or naturally occurring object. And you can always look at OCLC's bibliographic formats and standards for more information. But one of the naturally occurring objects in the definition and the formats and standards includes clothing, dioramas, exhibits, games, machines, models, puzzles, sculptures, simulations, and stitchery, three-dimensional artwork, and toys. So this is definitely an R. And then the BLVL, the bibliographic level, is coded as M for monograph item. So remember, a monograph is a non-serial item that is either complete in one part or complete or intended to be completed in a finite number of separate parts. I know it seems a little strange to consider this as a monograph, but think of this in a broader scope where this quilt is basically a standalone item. Maybe that will help. So under CTR for type of control, that is coded A for archival. So the material is described according to archival descriptive rules, focusing on the contextual relationships between items and on their provenance rather than on bibliographic detail. And the specific set of rules for description may be found in field 040 subfield E, and all forms of material can be controlled archivally. And then TMAT, the type of visual material, for three-dimensional artifacts or naturally occurring objects is coded R for Realia. This is where the cataloger has to make a decision on what type of material is in hand. And then you have to find the appropriate code. And you can always look at bit formats and standards under TMAT for more information and more guidance. Technique is coded N for not applicable. And running time is coded NNN for not applicable. And according to the guidance in bit formats and standards, they tell you to use NNN for materials other than motion pictures and video recordings. And then we have country of publication, et cetera, is coded ILU for Illinois. And we'll find out a little bit more information about this quilt here in the MARC fields 007 through 340. So this slide has a lot of information. I'm not going to discuss each field, but I am going to talk about some of the fields that are notable. So the 040 field is not shown in its entirety for display purposes only. You can look this up later on your own if you would like to see all of the entries in the 040 field. So both of the 007 or the physical description fixed fields are coded for unspecified. So subfield A is coded Z for unspecified, and subfield B is coded Z for other. In the second 007 field, subfield A is coded Z for unspecified, and subfield B is coded U for unspecified. And then for more information about the 007 field, you can check out the bib formats and standard page. The 043 field, geographic area code, is coded for Illinois. The 264 field, production, publication, distribution, manufacture, and copyright notice, has a second indicator of 0 for production. And we know that this quilt was created in 1918, which is why the date is 1918. I don't know if you could tell in the picture, but it does have the date on there. So when you're cataloging objects, some of the MARC subfields can be omitted. Only the date is core for non-published items. Again, you can refer to OLAC's best practices for cataloging objects using RDA and MARC 21 for further guidance and examples. The 300 field, physical description, records muslin and color in subfield B, which are the other physical details, and the dimensions are given in subfield C, which you can see are 202 by 238 centimeters. Then we've got the 336 field for content type, which is coded for a three-dimensional form. And there are multiple 337 media type and 338 carrier type fields for the quilt, and the fact that this is an object. The 340 field, physical medium, subfield B is for dimensions. Subfield C is for materials applied to surface and is repeatable. So notice that there are two subfield Cs. One is for ink and the other is for thread. Ink is a term found in the RDA materials list, so that the source used, RDA matte, is added. Thread is not in the list of materials, so it does not have a subfield 2. And subfield E is for support, which is muslin in this case. When a term is used without a subfield 2, then a period is placed after the word. Look at thread and muslin above. This is not a recommendation of OCL's bib formats and standards, but it is a recommendation in MARC report. So that's why those periods are there. So you can use your cataloger's judgment and put the period or not put the period. And again, you can look at bib formats and standards and check out the 340 fields. They give some good examples. Okay, we're still looking at the MARC fields for the Red Cross quilt. So these are the 58XX through the 700 fields. If you look at the 588 field, the source of description note, that's now used to inform where the cataloger found the title. So again, according to OLAC's best practices for cataloging objects using RDA and MARC, only the note on source of title is required. So this 588, first indicator 0, second indicator blank, says title from quilt. And then the first 500 general note field says June 1918, which again tells us that the quilt was created in June of 1918. And then from the other 5XX fields, we find out that the quilt was hand lettered by W.D. Tinkham of Lakin, Illinois. The color used was red fast color ink. We also learned that the quilt was auctioned off and the proceeds were given to the local Red Cross Society. The 520 field, the summary, etc. note, gives us even more information about the quilt, that it honors the soldiers of Grayville, Illinois. It's made of unbleached muslin with a diamond pattern and narrow red binding. We also discover that the Red Cross emblem, quilt title, and the date were hand appliqued. The final sentence of the 520 field informs us that the 960 local citizens' names contributed funds for placement on the quilt. The 541 field, immediate source of acquisition note, is repeatable. The first 541 informs us that the quilt was a gift from Martha Marty Jordan, and the second 541 notifies us that the quilt was purchased at the Mildred Green Estate auction. Again, the ending period is not guidance from OCLC's bid formats and standards, but is suggested by MARC report. We have the 700 field, added entry personal name, which were created for the letterer and as well as the donor/contributor. And then notice that Grayville Ladies, Grayville, Illinois, has been added as the creator of this quilt in the 710 2 field for main entry, corporate name, name and direct order. All right, here is our second object. So this is the Centennial Celebration, Dixon, Illinois, 1830 to 1930. This is a 3 centimeter medal with an image of Abraham Lincoln, which commemorated the centennial anniversary of Dixon, Illinois, from 1830 to 1930, and the dedication of the Dixon Municipal Airport in 1930. Since Lincoln was not alive in 1930, he was definitely not present at the commemoration. Unless his ghost was, I'll leave that up to your imagination. And not all of the MARC fields display in the Dixon Public Library's online catalog view. So if you look at this view versus the upcoming ones, you will see that not everything displayed. So here is the front view of the medal. And it does say Centennial Celebration. And Lincoln, the soldier, Dixon, Illinois, 1830 to 1930. Sorry, it's a little hard to read. Okay, and here is the back view. And it does say dedication of Municipal Airport, Dixon, Illinois, 1930, and it's got an image of an airplane. So pretty cool. All right, so here are the fixed field elements for Centennial Celebration, Dixon, Illinois, 1830 to 1930. Again, this is owned by the Dixon Public Library. So TMAT, the type of visual material, is coded R for Realia. And again, you have to make a decision on what type of material you'll have and then find the appropriate code. So technique is coded N for not applicable. Running time is coded NNN for not applicable. Again, remember, use NNN for materials other than motion pictures and video recordings. And then country of publication, et cetera, is coded XXU for United States. So let's look at some of the variable fields. So here we have the 007 through the 338 field. Again, the 007, the physical description fixed field, is coded for unspecified. So subfield A is Z for unspecified, and subfield B is coded U for unspecified. The 246, first indicator 1, second indicator blank, varying form of title, note, added entry, informs us that the title on the back of the medal, subfield I, is dedication of Municipal Airport, Dixon, Illinois, 1930, which is recorded in subfield A, the title proper / short title. The 264, production, publication, distribution, manufacture, and copyright notice, has a second indicator 0, which is for the production date. Notice that subfield C is bracketed, even though the date of 1930 is found on the source, the medal. It is uncertain when the medal was produced. The 300 field, physical description, informs us that this is a medal and that it's in a display box. There are 2 337 fields, one for the medal and one for the display box. And then there are multiple 3X fields for the medal and the display box. Here are the MARC fields 340 through 655 for the Centennial Celebration. The 340 fields, physical medium, are used to record the dimensions, subfield B, and the material applied to surface, subfield C, which is metal. The 588 field, source of description note, informs us that the title was found on the front of the medal. And here's where we find out more about the medal from the first 500 field, that it's a medal. The dimensions are 3 centimeters. There's an image of Abraham Lincoln as a soldier on one side and an image of an airplane on the other side. And we also learned that the medal is affixed to a pin and a red, white, and blue ribbon, which we saw in those first 2 pictures. And then the 520 field, the summary, etc., informs us that this medal commemorates the centennial anniversary of Dixon, Illinois, and the dedication of the Dixon Municipal Airport in 1930. The 545 field, bibliographic or biographical or historical data, gives us even more information about Lincoln serving in the Illinois militia during the Black Hawk War. And it gives the years that he served as a volunteer from April 21st, 1832 to July 10th, 1832. And it also tells us that he never foresaw combat, but he was elected captain of his first company. And he was also present in the aftermath of 2 of the war's battles, where he helped to bury the militia dead. Sorry, can't read today. All right, here is our next item. This is the Abraham Lincoln button and coin. The CMC was asked to catalog the Lincoln button and coin for Dixon Public Library. If you look at the notes section above, you'll find that this collection consists of 1 metal button of Abraham Lincoln and 1 large copper penny, a replica, with Abraham Lincoln, which was produced in 1965. And this is the Dixon Public Library online catalog view. So let's see what this looks like. So here is the front view of the button and coin. It's a very shiny penny. And here is the back view of the Lincoln button and coin. All right, and here are the fixed fields. We're just going to talk about 2. So DTST, the type of date publication status, is coded M for multiple dates. Remember to use date 1 for the initial year and date 2 for the terminal year of a multi-part item. So the dates we have here are 1860 and 1965. And then for control, type of control, we have coded A for archival, since this is an archival object. All right, let's look at some more MARC fields 007 through 588. Again, I'm not going to go over each of the codes for the 007 fields, the physical description fixed field, since we covered these exact codes in a previous slide. Notice that the 264 field has bracketed information. In subfield C, the final date is not bracketed since that date appears on the coin replica. The 337 fields, media type, are for the coin and the button, as are the 388 fields for carrier type. The 340 fields, physical medium, are coded for dimensions, subfield B, which is 2 to 4 centimeters, the material applied to surface, subfield C, metal, and notice that the button is in subfield 3, material specified, while lacquer is in subfield E, support. The 588 field, source of description note, informs us that the cataloger divides the title. And in this case, it just says title divides by cataloger. And notice that for Realia, titles divided by catalogers are no longer bracketed in the 245 field, the title statement field, which is an OLAC best practice. Okay, we're still looking at the variable fields 500 through 655 for the Lincoln button and coin. And in this slide, we just learned a little bit more about the button and coin in the 500 general note. So the collection contains 1 metal button of Abraham Lincoln produced by Bastion Brothers in Rochester, New York, and 1 large copper penny, a replica, with Abraham Lincoln, which was produced in 1965. Okay, and this is our next Realia object. So this is the Eller and Willey Block Company Christmas ornament. This is the view from WorldCat. And this Christmas ornament is owned by the Dixon Public Library. So this is the red panel of the ornament. Notice that you've got the text as well as images, Christmas type images on the red. And then this is the blue panel. So you've got the sincerest season's greetings, and then a Christmas tree with children sitting around in a circle. All right, so let's look at some of the fixed field elements. So we're just going to talk about a couple. So time, running time is coded NNN for not applicable, which is used for materials other than motion pictures and recordings. And then the DTST, type of date, publication status, is coded as Q for questionable date. So the cataloger determined that this ornament was created between 1950 and 1960. So that's how date 1 and date 2 appear. So let's look at the variable MARC fields 007 through 588. Again, there are multiple 007 fields, a physical description fixed field for the ornament and the ribbon. There are multiple 337 fields, media type, and 338 fields, carrier type, reflecting the various media and carrier types for this ornament. The 300 field, physical description, gives us a little information about the ornament, that it is one specimen made of paper, and the dimensions folded and unfolded. So when it's unfolded, it's 14 by 8 centimeters, and when it's folded, it's 7 by 10. And then that 588 field, the source of description note, informs us that the title was devised by the cataloger. So here are the final variable fields for the Christmas tree ornament, the 500 through the 651. So from the 500 field general note, we find out that Sincerest Season's Greetings appears on one panel, and Eller and Willey Block Company, Dixon, Illinois appears on the other panel, and we saw that in the images a few slides ago. And then the 520 field, the summary, etc., gives us even more information about the ornament, that it is a Christmas ornament, which can be folded into a hanging ornament by a yellow ribbon. Okay. Now we are looking at Dixon, the Petunia City, Illinois, land of Lincoln. And this is owned by the Dixon Public Library. And this is the view from WorldCat. And this is a ceramic tile. So here is an image of the ceramic tile. So there's an image of a log cabin. And if you can read the words, it says that it's at Hazelwood and was erected in 1837, and Lincoln stayed there in 1856, I think. And then in the middle there, you see Dixon, the Petunia City, and then Illinois, land of Lincoln. On the left is the Lincoln the Soldier statue from 1932. On the bottom is Lincoln the student as a boy of 7 at Lincoln School. And then on the right is a statue of Black Hawk, chief of the Sox. And yes, they have apostrophe S, even though that's not right. We won't go into that. Okay, so on the back of the tile itself is this history that somebody typed up and added. And it gives a history of the Nachusa Hotel, Memorial Arches, Petunia Plantings, and the Peoria Avenue Bridge, which are all located in Dixon, Illinois. All right, let's look at the fixed field elements for Dixon, the Petunia City. We're just going to cover a few. So Lang, the language code, is coded as ZXX with no linguistic content. And then country of publication is coded XX for no place, unknown, or undetermined. And there are no other unique codes in the fixed field elements that we haven't covered in other slides. Just notice that this one has the DTST as Q, and then the dates of 1951 to 2019. Those were the dates that the cataloger chose. So it was manufactured, produced, created sometime between 1951 and 2019. All right, so here are some of the variable MARC fields 007 through 338. So there are two 007 fields, physical description fixed field for the tile and for the cork hanger. There are two 264 fields, production, publication, distribution, manufacture, and copyright notice. So the first 264 is for the publication information, and the second 264 is for the manufacturer information. There are two 337 fields, media type, and two 338 fields, carrier type, for the tile and the cork hanger. So here are some more of the variable fields, the 340 through the 520 for Dixon, the Petunia city. So there are multiple 340 fields, physical medium, for the materials, which are in subfield A, which is ceramic, and subfield C, which is also ceramic. The dimensions, which are in subfield B, which are 16 by 16 by 1 centimeter. The recording technique, which is in subfield D, which is stamping. Support is in subfield E, which is ceramic. And then the color content is found in subfield G, which is color. And then the 380 field, form of work, is a genre form term, pottery. And then from the 588 field, the source of description note, we learned that the title is from the ceramic tile. And the 500 field general note informs us that the ceramic tile was not manufactured before 1951. And then the 520 field summary, etc., describes the ceramic tile itself. And it tells us that it's one ceramic tile of sites in Dixon, Illinois. The sites depicted are a log cabin where Abraham Lincoln stayed in 1856, a statue of Lincoln the soldier in 1832, a sculpture of Lincoln the student as a boy of 7 at Lincoln School, and a statue of Black Hawk, chief of the Sox. In the back of the ceramic tile is cork with a hanger for hanging on a wall. All right, and here are the final variable mark fields, 600 through 655. These are the 6XX fields, and just notice that the 655 first indicator blank, second indicator 7 of pottery matches the 380 field from the previous slide. Okay, ta-da! So here are the resources that I used for this presentation. And hopefully some of you are already familiar with some of these, if not all of them. And again, these are going to be in the notes on L2. So if you have any questions, please post them in chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask your question verbally after we change that in Zoom. And here are the people on the call today.
Okay, so we do have a few questions. I'm going to try and unmute people if I can figure out where that is again.
Hang on, I'll try to find it.
Bottom. Oh no, here it is. Okay.
Did you get it?
So I think everyone's unmuted.
If they want to be.
Yeah. The first question and the second question are very similar. Okay, so the first question from Adrian Galindo is the second 377 field necessary? And then sort of the same question with added information is from Tracy Purcell. Can you please explain the reason to use 2007 fields in some records and not others, as well as why there are two 337s and 338s? I think these were answered during the presentation, but maybe you would like to reiterate that.
Okay, let me go back up to the, is the second 337 field necessary?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, and when you have more than one 337 field, then you're going to have more than one 007 field. So usually if there's more than, how do I want to, if there's more than one material, I guess the object's made of, like with the coin and the button, they were in a display box. So you also want to document that in the 33X fields. And then because you have them in the 33X fields, then you need duplicate 007 fields. I hope that answered that question.
The next question is, and I can kind of answer this, how is the order of the multiple 337, 338 fields determined when multiple objects? And basically that's when you use the macro, you're doing the first one so the first one, the first 336, 337, 338 go together, and then the second 337, 338 go together. So it's showing that the one is for the object and the other one is for the fact that it's a like the other part of it. So they go to, the first ones go together, the second ones go together.
Right. And you don't have to have multiple 336 fields if there's only one content type. So you can have one 336 and then multiple 337 and 338 fields.
And then next question, Tracy Purcell says, why do you use the XX in the language field if the object has lettering in English? And I kind of think that you're right, Tracy, we probably should have put in ENG. And she was primarily curious about the two 007s for the quilt.
Let's go back to that. The mouse is not my friend today. Sorry, look away if you if you're gonna get dizzy. Okay. So so the first one is for the muslin, I'm assuming, and the second one is for the fact that it's color, I think. Or is it just because it's an object?
I think it's just because it's an object. The first one, yeah, the first one is for the object itself. The second one is for like because it's not something that is it's not a, basically it's like not a book or a video or something. I don't know how to explain it, but because you have in any like kit or any of these, you're always going to need those two. I'm not sure exactly how to explain why you do, but you're saying that what you have is also unspecified. You have a three-dimensional form because you have this object, but it's also completely unspecified as far as the media and the carrier.
Right, because it's not a book, it's not a DVD,
right.
It's a different, it's other unspecified format, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that's all the questions we have on this right now.
Okay. All right, close your eyes. I'm going to go. So sorry. Just want to remind people that for typically the online with the CMCs are the third Thursday, but for the November one, we moved that up to the second Thursday. So that will be November 11th if you haven't registered for that already, because we have our IHLS member day on the 18th. And Sherry will be presenting Where's Waldo cataloging maps. So if you haven't registered for that yet and you are curious about how to catalog a map, then go ahead and register. Is there anything else that we need to remind people? And we've got these scheduled in L2 through April of 2022. You should be able to just do a keyword search of online with the CMC and find them, but you can just always go to the calendar, like I said, and look at the third Thursday. They're always from 10 to 11, except for next month. That's going to be the second Thursday. Okay, does anybody else have any other questions? Sorry, my voice is so, I feel like every time I do a presentation, I sound like this. This is really not my normal voice, I promise. Okay. And yes, I know nobody said this, that a lot of these were from Dixon Public Library. So my challenge to you is if you have cool items in your library, then you need to send them to us so that, you know, not all the cool items are coming from Dixon Public Library, but they're coming from your library. So that's my challenge to you. Yeah, and Heidi said she wants to see more cool items. Oh, and I do want to note, so we do have 2 new CMC catalogers, Mary Cornell and Eric McKinney, and they are with us today. And hopefully they'll be doing some presentations in the future. They just started with us this month. So if you see their names, they are part of our team. Okay, if there aren't any more questions, then we're going to go ahead and stop the recording. And like I said, just remember next month we're doing it a week early, and hopefully we'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Good questions.